Alright, so I'm trying out my new shave horse I just made. That's what the video is about, making this. And I'm very happy with how it turned out and how well it works. And I'll show you how I made it. So this is the Dumbhead design, which means it has a single arm that pivots through a mortise in the riser, which is this plank here, and the bench, which is this plank here. And that differs from the bodgers or English design, which has two arms on either side of the riser. One of the reasons I wanted to do this design is that it has a couple advantages over the English style or bodger shave horse design. And so the one is the pivot point is very close to the actual clamp action, and so that means there's a lot of mechanical advantage. So I actually don't have to push really hard with my foot to get a very strong clamp. And the other advantage is that you can put work in from the side, which is very useful if you're doing if you're making things that are long pieces, so axe handles, shovel handles, pick handles, as well as paddles, or if you're making bows. And so that's an advantage of this design. And when you're making axe handles, you're usually using seasoned wood, and it's usually something very tough. So for example, like this ash or hickory or oak or locust. So that means you have to be able to pull very hard. And that's where the stronger clamp really comes in handy. So, I can put a little more force, and then I can really yank, take a lot off, and it stays secure. It's made out of green ash logs, and I'll show you the process in this video of everything I went through to make it, from falling the trees all the way to the finished product. And everything was done by hand with hand tools, just to see, basically just so I could learn how to do it. And I definitely made some mistakes. This isn't perfect, it's not an exact how-to, but if you want a how-to, this is actually the design from Roy Underhill's book, and also from one of the episodes of the Woodwright Shop, so you can find that. And there's other people who have also made essentially this, exactly this design or a variation off of it based on this design on YouTube. So I'll put some links to those videos in the video description. But yeah, if you want to see how this shaving horse works and how building it worked, watch the rest of the video. This tree was taken down in November and was already shown in a previous video, but I'm including a bit of that process here too. The trees that I'm felling are green ash, which could be confusing because it sounds like I'm talking about green wood, as in not seasoned. I am working with green wood, but when I say green ash, I mean the species, Fraxinus pennsylvanica.
log like this can be split using just 1 or 2 metal wedges to get the split started, and then finishing the split using wooden wedges, which are called gluts. But I have a bunch of metal wedges, and so I'm going to use them. You know, when people say that ash is easy to split, I think they're talking about white ash or European ash mostly. I'm not sure if that's so true for green ash. So later that evening, I actually went and split a plank out of the other side of the log too. So now both halves were split into planks, and that was a mistake. I sort of assumed that I remembered well enough how to do it without going back to look up the procedures that Roy Underhill lays out again, and I didn't. So now I don't have enough material to make a dumbhead, because you have to start with a full half log to make a good one. That's okay, because I can use the extra plank. I definitely have plans for that. I might make a low workbench out of it. Actually keep the nicer one for that. And I'll just have to cut another tree to get a log for a dumbhead, and that's okay because I've got lots of dead and dying green ash. So I'm setting the planks up in some makeshift cribbing that I made out of an aspen log, and I'm tacking it down. I don't have a hewing axe or even real log dogs, so I'm just using 2x4s and nails, and I'm going to try my hand at hewing. Roy Underhill recommends an adze for this job of flattening out the planks, but I don't have an adze, at least not until I get around to making a handle for the rusty one that I've got laying around. So for now, I'm making do with what I've got.
Okay, so here's the first board. It's going to be the bench top or some other parts, depending. I'll keep the, I guess, the best one for the bench top of the shave horse. But here it is set up, and I've hewed it as far as I'm going to hew. You know, any more refinement, I'll use some other method, maybe a plane or something. I haven't decided. Probably leave it pretty rough. That's what it looks like. This is the axe I used, which is my 4-pound Mastercraft rafting pattern on a short stick, set up as a faller's axe. And because it's heavy and because it's sharp, it's the closest thing I have right now to a hewing axe that will work for this, and it did work all right. And this is green ash, and so it got cut down because it was killed by emerald ash borer. And there is one of the culprits right there. So you can see the trackways through the cambium, which is the layer between the wood and the bark that makes both the wood and the bark, and that's the part that they destroy, that kills the tree. But they also get just a little bit into the sapwood. They don't get very far, so the lumber could still be okay. I think this one is maybe just one that failed to emerge because it's pretty dried out. Yeah. Well, it's not really much to see, except you can see it's emerald colored. But yeah, that's the adult. And so it would have come out, had it survived, it would have come out in the spring or summer to mate and lay eggs on another ash tree. So here's kind of a before-after shot. Basically, this is one I've already done, one of the boards, and then this is the other one, the other plank. And you can see it's uneven, and that's all I'm trying to fix. I'm not actually going to try and chalk line and square it up and everything, because it doesn't have to be that straight. It has to be pretty straight, but it's already pretty straight. I picked a very straight grain section. So now, you know, I want to make it look like that. Smooth enough to work with. That's all I really am looking for, and probably all I'm really capable of, since this is my first time really hewing a large log.
What I ended up doing, I was saving the nicer plank for another project. I'll probably make it into a standalone bench. And I used the plank that wasn't quite so nice. That's going to be the bench for the shave horse. And that's the one I'm cleaning the bark off in this video right now. And then I'm going to have to go and get another log to use to make the Dumbhead and some of the other parts. But before I get to that part of the video, I'm going to talk a little bit about the other shave horse design, the design of my first shave horse.
So this is my first shave horse, and I've got a lot of use out of it. I'll probably keep using it some, and I use it in the video to make parts for the new shave horse. And there's a bunch of nice features about this particular design, which I got from the Traditional Tools YouTube channel, so I'll put a link in the description. One of the nice things about it is that it's very cheap and easy to make. So I made this out of scrap lumber, and you may have enough lumber just laying around to actually put this together. And the other nice thing about it is that it's very compact, so it only takes up about 10 inches of space from side to side, and so you can store it against a wall out of the way when you're not using it. And it's also very adjustable, so you can change the height of the clamp just by moving this dowel, and you can also change the angle of the riser by moving that dowel there, and the seat moves back and forth if you want, so you can change where you're sitting. And those things are very nice, but you know, my particular execution of this is a little rickety. But the other issue that I have with it is that this category of design is called a bodger shave horse or an English shave horse, and it has two arms instead of a single arm with a Dumbhead. And so what that means is when you're working with a long piece like this, it's very awkward to take in, to put in and out of the clamp. And the other thing is that because the pivot is down at the bench, instead of closer to the actual clamping mechanism, The clamp is not as strong with this design, and so if you're working with seasoned hickory or ash or ironwood or something like that, and you're really pulling, I just find it's not really able to hold well enough. So that's why I'm looking to upgrade.
One thing that I can use the old horse for is to make pegs that I will need for the new horse. These have to be made out of dry wood, and I have a piece of seasoned ash that will work. I think that the easiest way to make pegs with a drawknife is to make a long dowel and then cut it up. A spoke shave works well to finish it up. I used the same method to make the bigger pivot peg that the Dumbhead swings on, but this time I'm using ironwood because it's very strong and resistant to wear. Depending on where you live, ironwood can refer to different species, but this one, the one that I'm talking about, is also called American hop hornbeam. This piece came from one I felled in a previous video. The basic procedure is to make a square cross-section with the desired width, then shave off the corners to an octagon, then shave off those corners, etc. The peg will need a smaller peg to hold it in place. Okay, that's enough little sticks. It's time to get log number 2. The handle of the axe that I'm using to fall this green ash is also made of green ash. And the reason that I'm cutting so high up is because it's a multi-trunk tree, and I need to cut high enough up so that there's going to be room for me to do the back cut between the 2 trunks that are left. Another tricky thing about this tree is that it's been dead for longer than the others, so there's a lot of dead branches overhead, and that's the reason that I'm wearing a hard hat.
Oh, there it goes.
Pretty sure one of these two pulp hooks is legitimate, but the other one I think is for slinging hay bales, and I just sharpen it up and it works. Now I'm going to rough in the Dumbhead. First I cut the kerfs that delineate the ends of the splits, then I split out the waste. In the Roy Underhill design, the sides of the Dumbhead arm are split out first, but I'm splitting a plank off the front. That means I can't make the Dumbhead arm curve forward at the treadle end, the way Roy Underhill does it. But I think I can accomplish the same functionality by making a longer treadle later. I wanted to use the plank I just split out as the riser, but it's not thick enough for me to be confident in boring a hole for the pivot all the way through from side to side. I am splitting out a nice thick plank for the riser to give me more room to drill the pivot hole later. Chasing the split was pretty difficult. This sort of procedure would be much easier if I had a froe, but I don't. Well, I had to leave this for a bit, so now I'm just trying to get it done before dark. Okay, now I'm just trying to get it done. In the Roy Underhill design, the legs are split from the same log as the rest of the project. But I have some seasoned green ash heartwood billets that were for axe handles, but they're rejects, so they were in the firewood pile, and I rescued them for this project. I got the hold rope idea from Mr. Chickadee. The leg mortises will be about 6 inches away from the plank ends to avoid splitting. I made a guide to set the angle of the legs. I don't know exactly what it is, but I wanted it to be fairly consistent. This small timber auger is a fair amount of work, but nothing like the big one that I used later. The tenons are oval in cross-section, which is oriented so the long axis is parallel to the grain to avoid splitting the bench. I didn't clean out one mortise enough so the tenon started to split it out when I tapped it through, but it's not too bad. I evened the legs out fairly carefully so that the shave horse will be stable on the floor if I want to use it inside. It might not really be necessary if it was only used outside on the ground. Okay, now I'm going to finish carving the dumbhead. The thickness of the arm is decided by the size of the auger I'm using to mortise the bench and riser. The dumbhead block I made is bigger than it needed to be, so there's a lot of stock to remove. I'm rounding over the edge that will be the clamping surface so that it grips without marring and doesn't chip or split. This plank is going to be used for the riser and the spacing block that props it up. I spent an annoying amount of time trying to keep the spacer from rocking. The next step is to lay out the riser seats that I will then chop out. The rear riser seat is asymmetrical to compensate for the twist in the bench. Roy Underhill has an elegant solution to this, which is to make the riser out of a section of the opposite side of the split that divided the main log, and then turning it over so that the twist of the riser cancels out the twist in the bench. But in my case, the riser came from a different log. It took me a while to fine-tune the riser seats to get rid of the wobbling. I'm planning out where the mortices for the Dumbhead arm have to go. I didn't give the Dumbhead enough room to tilt fully open, which is something I'm going to have to go back and fix later. I sharpened the cutting edge of this rusty old 2 3/4 inch auger I recently bought at a barn sale, but I just won't dig in. I tried to sharpen the snail, which is the screw that pulls the auger in. That helped. It's still hard going, but at least it's going. I am open to auger sharpening and use suggestions. I joined the 2 auger holes into one mortise by chopping with a hatchet, but apparently I didn't record that. This will be the mortise for the riser.
Probably doesn't help that this piece of ash is already pretty dry.
I came across this homemade chisel type tool that I think was used to cut patio stones. I sharpened it up for this job, but it would be nice to have a framing chisel. And a corner chisel would be very nice. This is the marking method Roy Underhill describes to line up the holes to blind peg the spacer to the bench. I just bought this brace on Facebook, and for the moment I don't have proper auger bits for it. I marked the target hole depth on the bit with tape.
Here's a couple of the pegs that I made earlier.
Like the legs, the pins are oval in cross-section and rotated so that the long axis is parallel to the grain to avoid splitting the wood. One peg is enough between the riser and the spacer block, because when the shave horse is in use, the force of use is directed downwards. I didn't record it, but I ended up having to redo this one, because the riser wasn't quite in position. The back of the riser gets two angled pegs to prevent it from pulling away, but Roy Underhill recommends postponing the second one until the wood has had a chance to dry for a few months. Next, I bored the pivot hole.
This is hard work. This is a very long hole, and that's very hard wood.
Alright, so I finished putting the Dumbhead on last night, and all I have left to do now is to put on a treadle, and well, make the treadle and put it on, finish making it, and make some adjustments. So now that it's together, I can see there's a bit of a problem, which is I don't actually have enough room with the mortise in the bench to open up the Dumbhead all the way, so I've got to make a chisel out a little bit more room here, maybe another inch, should do it. And then the other thing I want to do is drill an extra hole in the Dumbhead arm so that if I want to put in something really big, I can raise the Dumbhead arm up a little bit. And then the other thing I want to do is, because the Dumbhead arm is really thick, I've basically fitted to the auger that I have. It doesn't actually have to be that thick, and so I might chisel it out just right here where it sticks up above the riser, just a little bit off this side and a little bit off that side, just so I have a little bit more workspace where the jaws are.
I sort of jumped around in the actual build, but for the sake of narrative continuity, pretend the second hole through the Dumbhead arm is not there yet. This piece will be the treadle. I chiseled the mortise at an angle so the treadle would angle up at the long end and the tip wouldn't drag on the ground.
So right now I'm working on the brace part of the bracing bit, the head of it where you put your weight, because it is seized, and I've kind of got it apart so now it'll turn. I don't know what's wrong with it, but that sort of puts a damper on my plan to do this thing only with hand tools. I've got the whole second hole halfway through the arm of the Dumbhead, and this thing is seized up, so I still have to finish drilling that hole, and then I have to drill a final hole to seat the treadle and put a peg in it so that it won't fall off. And I might have to do those with the electric drill if I can't get this thing to work at least long enough to do that. Bending it. So there was a little burr on the shaft. I don't know how or where it came from. but it was jamming the sleeve. So I filed that off. I've got a little file. I filed that off. Now when this goes on, it turns, which is perfect. The only thing I have to do is try to get back together and put all these little ball bearings back. I think that's all I can find. Well, it's a little bent out of shape, but it'll work.
Once I get some proper bits for this brace, I will be able to make nice tidy holes without any tear out. Now I'm enlarging the mortise in the bench to allow for more clearance for the Dumbhead arm. This is for the peg to prevent the treadle from falling off.
Alright. So, yeah, let's try it out and see if it works. It works.